All right, hi everybody. As this first slide suggests, my name is Geoff Robinson, and I'm here talking about passkeys. If you read the little synopsis in the schedule, it said this. WebAuthn and Passkeys are something that we've seen showing up a lot in the last couple of years, and I've been working with this for several years myself, and I am an application security guy. I want to look at this from an offensive security perspective, right? Like, okay, great, passkeys are great, they're better than passwords, but exactly how and how can things go wrong, right? Because it's still software and things are still going to go wrong. Let's figure out where those things are. So that's kind of been this project. So this talk for me is a middle step, and it's like kind of a series that I've been doing for a year or so now. Of some work, and that work continues. So this is a little snapshot of what I've been up to. This is me. My 8-year-old took this picture. He did a pretty good job. So I'm principal consultant. I work for a company called iVision, which is based in Atlanta, and I've been in this seat for 9 years. The person who hired me into this seat is sitting right there in the back, trying not to draw attention to himself. I'm in Chicago. I'm a software developer. I was a software developer before that. So I said, very Chicago. I went to school there. Street fests are great. Don't put ketchup on anything. It's a crime. My first career was I was worked here. This is the Chicago Board of Trade. I worked with this guy, I will introduce that green jacket. That was our company. And you see that they're holding this tablet. I worked on the software that's on there and servers on the back of it, kind of soft real-time trading system. So I was like a network programmer, first cut. Anyway, so I've been doing stuff for a while. This is an overview for today. So I want to talk about why do we have passkeys in the first place? Who created them? Why do we think that they were a good idea? Kind of how we got to where we are. Talk a little bit about technical underpinnings of how passkeys work, which is essentially like a lot of extra complexity on top of public-private key pairs. And then the work that I've been doing most recently, surveying passkeys in the wild, looking at public websites that have these things out there. I want to get a sense of one, growth over time. So if I can look at the internet and see different authentication endpoints coming online, I can kind of map that. Who's listening for passkeys, who's allowing it. And then the challenge messages and other like formats from the protocol that are coming from these endpoints. I can look at those and I can see the configurations that people have publicly available on some level. And I think that helps, but it's at least a step. So like some of the fact finding out there. So anyway, so let's start off with this part. Okay, what problem are we trying to solve? We're trying to solve the problem of passwords. I mean, it's really that everybody knows that passwords are the problem. It's what we've been talking about for a long time. Humans create terrible passwords. They're difficult to remember. They're easy to guess from an adversary perspective. Phishing and social engineering. Passwords can be are a secret that's sent over the internet, so they can be intercepted. Hashes of passwords can be cracked. So this is a Verizon data breach report from last year. Says what we already know: 60% of breaches involve a human element, phishing, that sort of thing. Passkeys are intended to make phishing much less successful. Because if you as a person can't accidentally give up the secrets that are safely stored in whatever passkey store you have, then it'd be hard for somebody to trick you into doing that. You don't have that capability. I think that's the idea. So passkeys are the solution to our problems. There's actually a few different things that the FIDO2 specification, which is what passkeys are based on, it says a couple of different things. It's started out as a hardware-based multi-factor authentication and has also come to include passwordless authentication. We're focusing on passwordless authentication today. We're talking about passkeys, using them as your first or only factor for getting into your account as an alternative to password or some other kind of authentication scheme. So there's lots of different ways to store a passkey. There's YubiKeys, which is everybody familiar with YubiKey? They're like everybody's favorite, like little thumbprint passkey storage, and they do a lot in this space. They're one of the main sponsors of passkey boosters of passkeys in the world because their business is built around it. But there's a lot of other startups in this area too. I put a couple of other things on here for these other kinds of passkey devices and our mobile phones, right? Things that have biometric authentication elements built into them, right? Prove your identity to the device, and that device says you are who you are to the relying party on the back end. So great. This is amazing. Super easy, right? You just have the thing, you plug it in, you log in, you don't have to worry about it. Enhanced security, improved privacy, simpler login experience. You don't have to remember all those passwords or change them all the time. Microsoft says this in their documentation, right? Simplifies access management. Your help desk is going to spend a lot less time doing all of this stuff. And so, of course, I'm here to ask, are these claims too good to be true, right? So do we actually realize all of these security benefits? So I would say we realize a lot of them, but there's, it's not, every time I hear somebody talking about passkeys, they're boosting it and they don't talk about caveats. And so that's my job, right? That I assign myself. Anyway, so here's my spoilers for today. So FIDO2, a couple of things. So it was originally designed around passkeys being stored in hardware authenticators, where you have physical security around it. Think about the SIM card in your cell phone, right? Like that has a secret on it that only the cell phone, the cellular company on the other side, like has the counterpart to that, and that proves your identity to the cellular network. Passkeys work in basically the same way, right? If you have a passkey device, like your passkey is stored in a hardware authenticator, it's protected. It's hard for an adversary to exfiltrate that physically from the device. They have to get that one, they have to get the things out, and then they have to know what it's for. It's really difficult. But that's not where we are, right? So these guarantees are being eroded in practice and actually use a lot of password managers that don't have any of that at all. So maybe that makes it easier to steal passkeys. It's not magic. Some security issues still exist. WebAuthn is web. It's JavaScript based. Cross-site scripting still exists. Other web difficulties like application security things are still there and could be a way for us to steal somebody's credentials. And finally, it's really complicated. I get confused all the time, hopefully not while I'm talking today, but there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of different options, and I feel like implementer confusion is going to be a problem for everybody. Good luck to you guys who are here trying to figure out how to do that. Okay. We'll make a brief history of FIDO2. Okay, FIDO Alliance, this is the industry organization that writes all of the standards. It's a collaboration group. It was started by these companies 13 years ago, and they do a great job of writing standards. And here they are. WebAuthn is the like JavaScript browser standard that I'm focusing on here. It's based on these predecessor protocols. FIDO2 is really the main one, and then there's the earlier versions of it that were really like hardware token based, from the original versions of this. But that legacy is important because it's really coming from this hardware authenticator standpoint. Okay, all of the major browsers support WebAuthn now. That's been true for a long time. These are our current standards. So continuing to work on it. This is me. So I started working with passkeys 5 years ago. So I do application security. We have a client with a large customer base that was early adopter of this technology. They're rolling it out for their consumer group, right? So this is a big company in the world that was doing this. And so I got to pen test this system that was built from them, look at the FIDO server, see if I can break it. Like, how do you do that stuff? Look at their client authenticators, how that is integrated, how they're using it. Can we break this thing? And I really, with some other colleagues, like we look at the whole protocol, like how's that work? Look at how it was implemented. How does that work? Like, pretty great. So I've been touching this for a little bit of time. The protocol's sound, but then of course, so is OAuth, but we break that all the time too. They put this conference on every year. I went last year. It's really beautiful. This is the best version. I mean, come on. This is much better. Anyway, San Diego area. This is from that conference. I just want to touch on this. This is a slide deck from one of their keynotes that I just took. It's 9 slides. It's a survey of FIDO Alliance members. This is like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, PayPal, and some other big ones. And it's just basically talking about passkey adoption. So for these large companies that are leaders in passkey space adoption, they say 93% of their accounts are eligible for passkeys. A third of all accounts have passkeys, and a quarter of accounts rely on passkeys to log in. So for Google, they've had over 1 billion users have used a passkey at least once. That's a lot, right? So there's really a lot of adoption here. If you are going to regular websites now, like I go to Best Buy and it says, don't you want to log in with a passkey? So like commercial sites are starting to push these now for various reasons, one of which is this passkey sign-in success rate is easier. This is a time to log in with a passkey versus logging in with a 2-factor authenticator app or some other kind of second factor token. And help desk calls are down doing this stuff, right? So this is what companies care about a lot. So these metrics seem to be real. So okay, so that's one thing that might be real. Early info says maybe you want to do this. Okay, trying to catch back up on my time. Anybody have any questions before I go do technical stuff? Okay, passkeys. Background, my background. Everybody remembers where they are. You're in Denver. Okay. Okay. Passwords. Very simple. You know a secret. You send me that secret. I verify that that's the same secret that I thought you knew, and you get in. It can't be any simpler. But there's problems with that simplicity. A little underpinnings of how passkeys work. Asymmetric cryptography, which is public-private key pairs. This is the foundation of security on the internet, right? This, is the cryptographic math from the late 70s that we've just been building on. Talks about this is how a SSL certificate authentication works, all identity authentication. Basically, all of this stuff that we rely on uses this technology. I think a lot of people are familiar with it. I'm not going to get into it. I just want to name it. And I want to name these 2 key properties that public-private key pairs have, because this is what we're going to rely on for passkeys. So if you have a public-private key pair, one, you can get confidentiality. So if you have the public key and the private key, right, this public key can be used to encrypt a message and send it to the party that holds the private key. Only the person who holds the private key can decrypt that message, right? Okay, confidentiality of message. Anybody in the world, because the public key is public, can send a message. Only one person holds a private key. They can decrypt that. Conversely, you can do authentication with it, and we'll do this more. The private key can be used to sign a message, right? And then anybody with the public key can verify that this thing was signed, cryptographically signed by the holder of the private key. So this is what a passkey is. The private key goes on your authenticator. Only you have it. The FIDO server sends a challenge through the FIDO client to the authenticator. It responds to it by signing it cryptographically, proving that it is the key that was associated with the account. And you're in. Better than a password, because nobody can ever get at that private key, right? It's locked away on that SIM card or wherever it is. This is from FIDO documentation standards. This is the standard basic model for how this works. I'm going to name a bunch of names. Glossary time. You guys ready? Okay, on the right is the relying party. That's the server. That's the web service or the host, the thing you're authenticating to. It's called the relying party because they rely on the authenticator to do the correct identity proofs and then report back, right? And it says, yes, that person is here. They put their finger, they did the fingerprint authentication on the biometric device that I had. It checks out, and I took the private key and signed the thing, so you know that it's really them. You should trust me and let them log in. Um, uh, also on the backside is the FIDO server that actually does that work on behalf of the whatever application. That's our relying party. On the other side, there's a bit of a stack, and there's three things. So let me talk about them here. So the user device, this is your laptop or phone. It's the thing that you're running on. User agent is software. It's probably your web browser, but it's or an app, but it's the thing that's running on the device that authentication is flowing through. And then there's the FIDO client, which is either your password manager or your authenticator token, the thing that actually has the passkeys in it. And these are the three things that relate to each other on the client side. It's complicated because there's a variety of things. You can go through the browser and have the authenticator be your phone, right? So the authentication request comes through a browser, and you can ultimately have a passkey on your phone that it then proves it and sends it back through up to the server, right? You could have it on your watch that goes through your phone. So, right, you're authenticating on your app, it goes NFC, your tokens on your watch or your ring or something else that's near field. You do the thing, it goes back through this chain. All of those different scenarios are handled by all of this complexity here on the left. It does everything. Swiss Army client. We talked about that stuff. Yeah. Different layers. That's basically it. This is the relying party side, which I went through. Okay, one more thing. There's actually two different public-private key pairs in the passkey protocol. So the first one is what they call the attestation key. This is if you have a hardware authenticator, this is a key that's baked into the authenticator by the manufacturer that proves the identity of the hardware model to the relying party. So if you have a YubiKey from whatever series with this serial number, Yubico is going to have written attestation private key material onto it. And when you're registering that key with a relying party, it's going to do its attestation information. And it has a lot of properties to it, right? It's like, oh, I have a biometric thing and I always use it, or I don't have a biometric thing, or like, how do I prove local identity or not? Like, how secure is it? All those varieties are there. So that's one thing. Then the second thing is the actual authentication key. This is yours. This is the key that you set up when you register a device. When you register that device, it writes that key onto it, and that's the key that you use to log in to this specific service. So if you have one token, it'll have one attestation key on it and a lot of different private keys for all of the different things that you use that to log into. And the relying party might care about either of these, or both, or neither. Well, they're going to care about one, at least, hopefully. Here's this slide again. So you can see that there's both attestation and authentication keys here inside the authenticator. One of them you make, one of them is made by the manufacturer. Okay, I lied. There's one more thing. It's really easy, though. There's just 3 flows in this protocol that are really relevant. Registration, just taking the private key, is like setting up the private key to log into a thing. Authentication, actually logging into the thing. And deregistration is just forgetting about all that. And there's registration. And I'm going to kind of skip through this stuff. I can send you, this is the standard FIDO documentation stuff too. So no, yeah. But I'll get you what you need. I'm going to go through this one quick because I just don't want to spend too much more time here because I talked about this stuff. Here's another version of it. we can talk about it. Let's see. Deregistration. I want to look at one thing I didn't mention yet. Okay. On down here is this thing, FIDO metadata service. What's this? Who knows what the FIDO metadata service is? Ooh, exciting. This is why you're here. Or I've bored you to tears so much that you can't lift your arm. Okay, the metadata service. This is a database that's kept up to date, live, by the FIDO Alliance, and it contains information about all of the hardware authenticators that are out there in the world that have been registered and that have been certified by the FIDO Alliance. So YubiKey, your phones, like all this different stuff. The attestation key goes to the relying party. It can take that the ID, you can take that attestation information, look up in the metadata service all of the properties of that authenticator, and decide if it wants to allow you to use it. So if it's considered an insecure style of authenticator, as the relying party, you can deny that. You can say, you're not allowed to use a password manager. You have to use a real hardware token. And it has to be a level 3 hardware token certified by the FIDO Alliance. And it was going to have the attestation key in it. And you shouldn't be able to spoof that because public-private key security. So you should be able, the relying party should be able to use this to say, I know that the authenticator you're using, I know what the properties of it are, and I can trust that it is what it says it is. Cool. WebAuthn is, there's URLs for a couple of standards, but it's basically these 3 JavaScript calls. Navigator credentials create has been around for a while. Then you use it with the public key credential, and that means passkeys. Store means store it in your password manager. Get means use it to authenticate. That's it, really. Thankfully, something simple. Okay, you've seen this. If you look, so what those calls do in your browser is they pop these things up, right? Do you want to use your passkey to log in, or maybe you have your passkey on your phone and you're going to scan that QR code and complete the login flow that way, or registration, or whatever is happening. Okay, that's WebAuthn. That's our whole flow. We've connected all of this crazy technology together through the web browser. What could go wrong? Okay, some reference material. So I'm going to move on from technical underpinnings and then give you a chance to ask me the stuff that I glossed over. WebAuthn.io lets you play with passkeys. You can just go register, create a user, authenticate, do other stuff, right? And it just kind of reflects all that information so you can get used to the protocol. The FIDO Alliance, of course, has good documentation on all of this stuff because they wrote it. And some other things here are Microsoft Intra documentation is actually real good, especially if you're in a Microsoft world. And then Yubico has good, more plain language explainers. Okay, cool. How'd I do? Do you guys understand how passkeys work now? Great. Do you want me to stop or do more? More. Cool. That's great because I have more. I'm just going to wait a second. No, really. So did that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about the underpinnings of it? I don't want to repeat myself. I didn't mention it, but that's really like, it's a translation layer for like once you get to the specific hardware that actually is housing the key. It's an abstraction layer, so the hardware can be whatever it wants, and then the FIDO client just needs to know how to talk to ASM, so it's kind of an API. Yeah. Okay, so this is, we want to talk about what I've been doing. That was all background. I didn't do any of that. I learned about it, and then I told you quickly. All right, so it's 2026. I want to know, so what's actually happening? Who are the vendors in the passkey space, and what are they doing? What are they building? Who's actually using this stuff? And what are they doing with it? And are there security flaws? application security stuff. Okay, so that was the technical details, right? That's the protocol and the underpinnings and the what goes where and your network diagrams and stuff. But what's actually happening? What does the people space look like? What does the commercial space look like? Okay, browsers. All the browsers support this. We know that. And it's available across platforms. Ubiquitous is the term. So we know this. That's true. Authenticator OEMs. I showed some of these things, but Yubico is an example of this. So a lot of the players in this space, there's actually a lot of startups in this space that are doing enterprise identity solutions. So like, whereas before, like RSA was going to sell you that one-time password generator, like hard token, and you use that to log in. You're going to give that to your employee population, and that's going to be your second factor. There's a bunch of startups now trying to do passkeys as a first factor, or different versions of that, to do the authentication for your enterprise solution. Like build this for you. We're going to make the hardware tokens. We're going to integrate it. We're going to do all of the things that you would need to do as a corporate player to do that stuff. So there's a lot of companies in that space trying to make that happen. Password managers. There's a lot of password manager companies that are starting up that want to build their business around managing your passwords for you and passkeys for you. What could go wrong? We already know that it was a great idea to trust third parties with all of our data before. Why not just give them the passwords themselves, right? 1Password got hacked. Who got hacked? Which one was it? LastPass. Yeah. Everybody see? Okay, great. There's a lot of those though. And then platforms, right? I mean, we know these things, but they're explicitly in this technology space. So this is Apple, Google, Microsoft, Linux, mobile platform. Sadly, Linux does not have passkey integrated into the platform. Maybe you know that you can do it. You just have to run your own password manager on the platform and kind of build it yourself. But it's not in the kernel. Exactly. That's the corporate ecosystem, really, in a nutshell. Who's using it? Those same players are using it, right? I can use passkeys to log into all of my big tech accounts. Financial service providers are very interested in this. Like the list of companies at the FIDO conference last year is basically a list of financial services companies in the US, right? So like everybody who is moving money around really cares about this because they think it helps them with fraud prevention. Yeah. Well, there you go. So everybody's looking at this. And we're starting to see it more like Best Buy, Target, right? And some other solutions. And I feel like everybody else is just starting to think about maybe implementing it with their app. But like, why add another way to log in? Yeah, you're in the right place. Uh-huh. I think transitioning the world to a passkey only authentication is hard. Like a lot of the ways that you have to set this up is you're gonna, oh, I have an existing account with the username and password login. And now that company adopted passkeys, but they can't turn off all of their password authentication flows yet. So they're just adding passkeys to it. They want to get adoption up. So the game right now is to get people to be aware of passkeys, how they work, and to start adopting it. But you still have to support everything that you're already doing now. And so there needs to be I would guess that you need to have like some other kind of incentive to add this piece of complexity to your website. Yeah, well, there's this group that's trying to push all of this stuff, and financial services companies want us to move this way because they think it's going to help with fraud prevention and better identity validation. I think a lot of smaller players are just like, they'll do it when their users demand that they have it, probably. Like, I don't think, like, adding another door to the house isn't going to make it secure. Like, I don't care how, like, you can put a bank vault door on the side of your house, but if you still have a garage door that's unlocked over here, like, we're just like, you can still get in, right? Like, adding passkeys just to the system doesn't make it more secure. It gives you a secure way to log in, but it just gives you another way to log in. It's actually inherently less secure. So, like, really, to get there, we have to, like, get rid of the old password authentication, and that's going to be hard because I think, like, passwords actually kind of solve some problems that passkeys don't, and we have to fix those first before, like, we can really, like, do it everywhere. Okay, what's up?
I was going to say, we have delayed adopting it because our user base generally slants older and they aren't comfortable with the technology and they're somewhat intimidated by it, and they've been habituated to using passwords. That's really it. Like, unless there's some sort of standard control that forces us to shift, we won't.
Yeah. Okay, a little bit about that's stage setting stuff. What am I doing? Okay, I want to see what everything's happening. I figured if I do detailed fact finding, then, you know, I'll do some work in between, and that'll lead to vulnerabilities. Good, I got Geoff back because you were bored there for a while. Okay, that's this detailed fact finding. Background is everything you've seen so far. How does a protocol work, right? All this stuff. Who's doing what? What if I use the metadata service, which is out there on the internet, to catalog authenticators? Okay, that's a start. This is a list of all of the authenticators that are certified and have attestation information. I could do it. It's actually not a comprehensive list of all of the authenticator identities that are out there. It's sort of interesting. Why is that? This whole thing is built around metadata service. What's going on? Okay, well, there's this GitHub repo that has popped up for passkey implementers, right? If somebody shows up with some sort of authenticator and it has an ID, this is a mapping service. It's basically just takes that ID and puts a logo on it, right? Because it knows the identity, the authenticator identity that the user is trying to use. So just as like a, you know, you want to pop up like your, you know, Google Password Manager logo, so user has some confidence about what's happening. You can see that here. This list in the GitHub repo essentially breaks down to the list of password managers that are out there, right? This is it. The password managers are not in the metadata service. Password managers don't do attestation. This is the thing. You can do passkey authentication without doing attestation at all. Aren't you mad at me now? I spent 15 minutes explaining hardware-based authentication to you, and we don't even really use it that much. That's interesting. You know, we can keep track of this. Okay, we can keep track of this stuff. I wonder if there's other sources of other authenticator identities, because these don't do, like, what do people claim to be? These don't do attestation, which means you can just spoof it, right? If there's no identity protection on any of these IDs. So I can just go claim to be Google Password Manager to any FIDO server, and it will believe me. In order to do something different, you have to be registered in the metadata service. So I just said this. Okay, we're eroding some of the guarantees that are originally intended in this service. What could go wrong? The trade-off is user adoption, right? It's easier. It basically breaks down to, you know, if you think about like SSH terminal login, you know, like password login, or you could generate you know, a public-private key pair, and you put the private key on your laptop and you put the public key on whatever server you want to log into, SSH, and it does the key authentication. I mean, basically using password managers is that, right? That's the authentication scheme. And then it just kind of flows through a few different pipes, right? Now we're running it through the web browser. I guess that works. Okay, so we're going to name that. So authenticators without attestation are called synced passkeys. You'll hear this term. if you pay attention to this stuff. The alternative, these hardware authenticators are called device-bound passkeys. So now those are the terms we're going to use. We're going to say synced passkeys and device-bound passkeys. Why do we call it synced passkeys? Because there's a feature in password managers that lets you take all of the passwords that you have and put them on a different device, right? You're logged into your Google Chrome profile here, and all of your passwords are available, and you go log into your Google profile on another browser on another computer, and it goes and grabs all your passwords so you can log into the sites. Passkeys go along for the ride there. In fact, FIDO's working on this credentials exchange protocol now. I don't think the spec's been released, but they're trying to come up with a standard so you can move your passkeys from one password manager vendor to another using a standard protocol. Great, I love to hear this. They're like, we're designing a way to exfiltrate passkeys from whatever system you're using to store them. I'm like, I'm gonna pay attention to this. There's another variation on attestation. So for those of you doing the enterprise rollout stuff, maybe you have seen this. You can actually work with a vendor like Yubico. I keep using them, but they're well known. And they will put private attestation key material that's specific to your company on the devices that you order in a batch and send them to you. And you can give those to your employee population. Now, only those specific devices that you issued, you can restrict logins to only use those devices that came through your order process. And so nobody can do a bring your own authenticator if you want to do that. So you can do that. So then this is all in the spec, but it's another complexity. I have a question. So I know I saw it, I was reading stuff about this, like just preparing myself to talk here, and Yubico has a warning on their website. It's like, you should never issue an enterprise attestation key to somebody else, right? Or like, okay, these things are going to walk out. I don't know what the security implications are. You issue these things to somebody, they offboard, they take that token, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to use this around in the world somewhere else. They've got your company's attestation key on there. What does that mean? It breaks part of the FIDO protocol. So one thing I didn't, this part I didn't talk about, like, you're not supposed to be able to ID a specific individual based on the attestation information. But if they have an enterprise key, maybe you can. So maybe that's broken. Maybe you could check somebody. Anyway, I said this. In summary, this is your Microsoft Passkey FIDO2 configuration page for Entra ID. You have to know everything that I just said, and then you can configure it here with all these little dials. So allow self-service setup, which is like, are you going to allow people to set up their own, register their devices? Do you want to enforce attestation, or are people allowed to use password managers? If you do enforce attestation, are you going to restrict the kinds of keys, hardware authenticators that they're allowed to use? Or are you going to issue your own and list the specific authenticator IDs that are specific to your company and only allow those? Or are you going to allow a mix of it? Or are you going to screw it up and think that you only are allowing the passkeys that you issue, but actually anybody with using a password manager can just spoof it because you misconfigured it? Probably somebody's going to misconfigure it. It's really complicated, right? Okay, that's what we should look for. So those are things. I also think that authenticator spoofing is possible, because I did one once. Okay, what goes here? You think hard about it. Maybe I should scan the internet for FIDO servers. I talked about this at the beginning. Like, why not? This can't be that hard, right? Okay, yeah, why not? So there's lots of things that are supporting passkeys now. I want to see what they're doing. I want to see how many people are doing passkeys. I want to see what the public-facing interface attack surface looks like for it. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but that's what fact finding does, right? We're just we're laying the groundwork. And like, if I'm doing a pen test on a system that I haven't seen before, this is how I approach it, right? So I'm like, okay, what are the facts? What's the system? What happens when I do this? What goes here? What's that? Let's kind of lay it all out and try to be as organized as possible. And then things jump out. You're like, this is wrong. So I haven't seen that this is wrong yet, but we're right in the middle of it. Okay, here's how I've done this. I'll kind of go through quickly. But basically, password manager vendors have published these lists because they want you to use passkeys. And they've said, look, you can log into all these places with passkeys. So great, now I have a list of a few places that you can log into with passkeys. And take that. That's a good starting point. The FIDO Alliance also wants you to use passkeys. Here's their list, right? They've got a pretty good set of both consumer and enterprises, companies, logos that use passkeys. Great. Okay, I can put these 4 lists together. So I've got 467 unique sites, 708 total listings from all of these different web pages. I can just scan that every week, see if it changes, go look it up, see if somebody added something. But this is my test set. I think I can find WebAuthn endpoints on all these domains that are listed. So I should be able to write a script that does that. So I did. And we're going to look for these JavaScript signatures to see if we can find WebAuthn endpoints. And so then this slide is the story of me ending up writing a bot that crawls the internet and does a bunch of stuff. And I could write a whole talk about just doing this, because this is a terrible idea. This actually turned out to be a bunch of work that I'm still kind of in the middle of. Here's the upshot. I can't just use sitemaps and robots and do traditional crawl stuff in the way that the website wants, because almost always they steer you away from the interactive authentication endpoints, right, for crawlers. So I sort of need to not do that. But then there's a billion different ways to initiate the login flow as a user. And I need to know what all of those are and try them. So basically, I wrote something that it goes to the front page, it scrapes all the HTML, looks for links, it scrapes all the JavaScript, looks for links. Then it goes in and it runs a bot and it tries to execute all of the JavaScript things that you could possibly click on as a user and follows those links. And then it tries to prioritize following links based on what's most likely to contain an authentication flow. And I got it mostly working. I got like half of the websites in my test set right now. I should be doing better. Anyway, once I get that to a place where I feel like that's good enough, which I wanted to do before I talked, but it might be next week or later. I'm gonna go run it on the internet, right? So Common Crawl. Does anybody know Common Crawl? Google built this thing called the search engine, and they had a metric called PageRank, right, back in the day, and they do that, right? They crawl the internet. There's now, Common Crawl is this, is an open data resource that crawls the entire internet every month and catalogs it, and they have a version of PageRank called Harmonic Centrality, which, you know, rank orders all of the most important websites, whatever, based on like, it's very simple, PageRank-like sort of prioritization. Anyway, but I can get a list of domains off of this, and then I can go see who's doing WebAuthn and all this stuff. And the further version of it is to then go pull like from the authentication endpoints and get the JSON payloads that are actually part of the FIDO protocol and see what they look like. And now I can catalog that across the internet, and then that's the end of my step 2, right? So I'm here. And I have a further step that I want to do that may or may not work, but the FIDO Alliance certifies all these different FIDO servers on the back end, so maybe I can fingerprint them based on what their web presence looks like. I'm going to try to do that. Because then if there's a vulnerability in one, then I can go look at my database and I can see everybody who's running that. Right? What could go wrong? Anyway, so I'm working on it. Did I put that on there? Let's see. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, all the stuff that I wrote and the data that I have so far is in this GitHub that I put out, and this is my project for the year, so I'm gonna keep this up to date. This is gonna be a database that's building over time. Maybe we'll see how the internet evolves with passkey adoption using this data. That'd be cool. And then maybe we'll figure and be able to answer this question. Yeah, I mean, it breaks down to like the different JavaScript frameworks, right? Are you using Angular? If it's Angular, I need to look for this stuff. If you're doing something else, like I need to look for something else. So it then comes down to the actual JavaScript framework that you're using for some of the flows. Or some websites are just like, it's all in the HTML and I just like pops right out. So it depends. There's also this thing called anti-bot detection. So now I'm the bad guy. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to stop here. This is my intent to stop here. I hit my mark on time. Difference between threats and vulnerabilities. Threats are always present. Vulnerabilities, Max is smiling because he made this picture like 9 years ago. A vulnerability is a realization of a threat. And this is my working threat model for passkeys. So the last talk I gave, I spent all of my time talking about this, which is why I didn't do it today. If you're like, I wish I had seen that because this is a lot more interesting than everything I just saw. That's online. If you go to my GitHub or the iVision Research GitHub, you'll find it. There's a PowerPoint slide with the audio recording of that whole presentation. So you can look at it. This is my top 10 list. And I was going to stop here and take questions, and then this is my outro. If I get one more, we have a WASP list, right? I think you guys can help me out with this.
Well, how did you lose your device?
That's a great question. That's one of the problems that we unsolved with passkeys. Is like inherently it's gone. So if that was your only thing, if that was your only way into an account, then you have to go reestablish trust with that bank or whatever somehow. So synced passkeys are kind of the answer. But a related problem, this is what I talk about in 8, like delegation is not solved with passkeys. How do you get somebody else to act on your behalf? With passwords, like I can call somebody on the phone and read them my password and they can log in for me, like in a pinch. I would never do that, of course. Number 2 was realized, the DEF CON talk last August, where you could spoof the pop-ups that show up in the web browser. This has been fixed, but it's there. Clickjacking. What year is it? I did number 4. I haven't published it. I'll work on that. So that's getting the attestation key out of an authenticator. You're not supposed to do that. And then I broke it. Okay, I have it now. There's this whole revocation process in the metadata service where there's like, okay, this key has been compromised. Nobody's allowed to use it anymore. Are they going to do it? It's never been used. So is that process going to work? Or is that process broken? I don't know. The metadata service is supposed to provide this information for you. So it's just like a revocation list on SSL certificates. Yeah, so if, I think if I understand your question correctly, yeah, so if an authenticator's attestation information gets busted, it should go into the metadata service and they'll tell you that it's busted and you should stop relying on it. Your FIDO server should know from the metadata service that it's not supposed to allow authentications from that key anymore. What could go wrong? Your whole user population is using YubiKeys and then they get compromised. Just turn them off, right? Yeah, so like some of these things are not totally working great from governance standpoint. I think we're gonna like run into these problems.
Your configuration guides, like CIS or number 6, that you can actually run and assess the servers to see if they're configured properly, or is it mature?
I don't think so. I think it's too new. I think the only thing that we have is the FIDO certification standards. And then I think Microsoft has done a good job of explaining their world and all of that. I think if you're like rolling your own, you're like using an open source FIDO server, I don't know if there's guides yet, actually. I'm not super familiar with that. There's a lot of different FIDO server implementations out there that are like officially okay. Yeah. And that's my time. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everybody.